Hi and welcome. My name's Nicole with morningchores.com, and today we're going to teach you how to do a fall garden cleanup. We do back to Eden garden method here on the farm. So if you're interested in learning more, there is a documentary, Back to Eden Garden. If you Google that, you can find it and you can watch it for free. So definitely check that out. But the method I'll be showing you today is a 4-step process that is based on the Back to Eden gardening method. The most important thing about the cleanup method that I'm going to show you today is that we are conditioning the soil. So our whole goal is to build nutrients, put nutrients back in the soil, and then we want to cover the soil to protect those nutrients so they're ready to go in the springtime. So the very first step in my 4-step process is to clean out the garden. That means pulling out your dead vegetables, plants that are dying off, and things that aren't going to come up. So this would be like your annual plants, so tomatoes, peppers, things like that. So what we want to do is clean all that out. Now I did want to mention that I do not clean out everything. I do let some of the vegetation stay in the garden, and the purpose of that is I'm trying to add more nutrients and more nitrogen back to my soil. So some things that I know will break down very easily, like pepper plant leaves and things like that, I will just leave, and I will just bury that under the manure and the wood chips, which I will discuss in the next steps. Most vegetation though, I do go ahead and pull out because they don't break down very quickly. So those things you just want to get out of the garden. And as you can see behind me here, I've already started the clean out process. We've pretty much got rid of all the vegetation about a month ago when things died off. It's hard to believe, but this garden was full of vegetables and produce, and now it's all gone. So it is a little bit bittersweet, but I am excited to prep the soil for the upcoming year. The first thing we're going to talk about is planting. So there are some plants that you do plant in the fall to prepare for next year. This is usually your bulb plants, and there's also some other things you can plant as well. So one of the things I'm going to discuss today is garlic. We like to plant garlic here. I already planted some along this fence behind me here, but this is something that you want to plant before you get your manure and your wood chips down, which I'll discuss in the next steps. So how you would plant garlic is, here you have a bulb of garlic. You can purchase these through a mail order, or you can get them at your local greenhouse or nursery. But what you would do is just pull the cloves apart like this. And you have a little root at the bottom and a point at the top. So you want to plant it in the soil with the root down and the point up. And then all you do is just make a really shallow hole in the ground. You don't want to bury it too deep. And you stick it in there with the point up, and you close it in. And that's it. Garlic is super easy. I always plant about 3 to 5 inches apart, so I put mine a little bit closer than what probably the books say, and I've had no problem with that. But this will come up in late winter, early spring, and it's definitely a treat. And what I've been doing is I have been saving my garlic bulbs from my previous harvest. So this year, when I harvested my garlic, I saved my biggest and best bulbs of garlic, and I replanted them this fall. So then those will create garlic next year, and it's just a perpetual thing. It's the gift that keeps on giving. So eventually at some point, I will no longer have to buy bulbs of garlic from a mail order catalog or from a greenhouse or nursery. Now that we've discussed planting, it's time to move on to pruning. So if you have perennials in your garden, you want to prune them, cut them back. It depends on the vegetable that you're talking about. But right here next to me in my raised bed, I have asparagus. And this needs trimmed back in the fall, usually when it starts to turn yellow, which it is. So what I'm going to do is prune this back with a pair of scissors. I'm just going to cut it back at the base and then it will be ready to go for next spring. So you want to make sure that you do this, research your plants, your perennials, and see what you need to do as far as pruning goes. Some plants you don't prune the first year you have them. So for example, I planted some lavender plants 2 years ago, and the first fall I was not supposed to prune them back, so I didn't prune them back, but this year I'm gonna have to do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this asparagus pruned back. Some of you may be wondering, what do I do with these asparagus stems that I just trimmed off? Well, I learned from a family member that what he used to do is he used to throw them in a marshy area, usually a ditch area by the road, and it would just grow up wild. So I'm actually gonna try it down by my road because we have a marshy area, and I'm gonna see if it comes up next year. Another thing I wanted to talk about in the pruning department is strawberries. A lot of people will thin out their strawberries at the end of the season because strawberries do overtake the areas that they're planted in. But what I learned from the Back to Eden garden method is I don't need to do that. So I don't thin out my strawberries at all. What I do instead is I cover them with manure and wood chips, which I'll discuss in the next steps. And then in the springtime, the only strawberries that come up are the strong ones. So all the weak ones die off under the manure and under the wood chips. They add nutrients back into the soil, and it's a win-win for everybody. I don't have to work so hard to thin out my strawberry plants, and they're providing nutrition back into the soil. I'm all about working smarter, not harder. The next step in our 4-method process is to add manure. So the purpose of manure is to add more nutrition to the soil, and a manure is a great way to do this. So now, where do we get our manure from? Well, if you have livestock, if you have chickens, rabbits, cows, goats, or sheep, this is a great way to use that manure for a good purpose. Thank you so much for joining me in today's video. If you'd like to see more of these videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button. You can also head over to morningchores.com, which you will find in the description box below. You will find a wealth of information on homesteading, DIY, gardening, and much, much more. We'll see you next time.